Hail to the god, who of old was called Adonis, Osiris, Dumuzi, Tammuz.
Sunday, Sunday, Sunday! It's time for another Deity Smackdown between Osiris, the god of the dead, and Dumuzi, the god who is dead, until he's not, and then he is again.
Hello and welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. Okay, if you've been to any mainstream Wiccan shindig, you've probably heard an invocation similar to the one that we just heard New Age Sally roll through. And in the early 20th century, there was an entire school of thought led by James Frazier that believed that all of the deities of the ancient Near East and Egypt were essentially the same trope, just with different names. And that probably influenced the modern Wiccan interpretation that you hear reflected in these laundry lists. But that's not true at all. Osiris and Dumuzi are not the same deity. They have a lot of differences that we need to sort out. What they have in common, both Osiris and Dumuzi come from the part of the world that is now called the Middle East. Both were believed to have been kings that ruled in the distant past. Both had a connection to grain, and both died under circumstances that varied according to myth. Where they contrast, Osiris taught people to farm. Dumuzi was a shepherd, not a farmer. Osiris had a jealous brother, Set. Dumuzi has no brothers that we know of. Osiris has his sister Isis, who is also his wife. Dumuzi has a sister named Geshtinana, but Geshtinana is not his wife. That's Inanna, aka Ishtar. Osiris is restored by Isis and Anubis back to life, but becomes the first mummy. When Dumuzi dies, there's no embalming involved. Osiris rules the underworld, called Duat in Egyptian. Dumuzi acts as a judge in the underworld, but is not its sovereign. Now these differences may seem superficial, but they actually point to cultural differences between Egypt and Mesopotamia, and some philosophical differences in how they viewed death and the afterlife. One key difference points to the way of life between Mesopotamia and Egypt. In Mesopotamia, farmers and nomads shared sort of an uneasy coexistence at times. And in songs celebrating, the betrothal of Inanna, she protests at first when she's betrothed to Dumuzi because he's a shepherd, and she says that she prefers the farmer. But she ends up happily marrying Dumuzi anyway. This reflects the understanding that the Mesopotamians had that both herders and farmers were necessary for their way of life. In Egypt, on the other hand, they were mostly farmers. You did have some herders, but they tended to be mistrusted, especially the nomads like the Shasu Bedouin. The Egyptians viewed them with fear and distrust, and there's even references to, Bedouins as, raiders and marauders. So they were a lot more homebodies. They wanted to stay in one place, and, the shepherds were kind of held at arm's length. Another important difference to understand, when Osiris died, there was no sovereign of the underworld in Egyptian belief, the underworld in their language being Duat. After Isis and Nephthys and Anubis restored Osiris's body, and revived him, he became it. He became the ruler of the underworld. Osiris is at once a mummified corpse and powerful deity who embodies resurrection. He resides forever in Duat, but his power is felt among the living, and it's celebrated when they bury the seeds and they sprout into new grain. Eventually, Osiris actually took on aspects of a creator deity, and he fused with Ptah and Sokar to become the triad Ptah, Sokar, Osiris. Meanwhile, Dumuzi, on the other hand, was sort of a new arrival in Kur, which is the Sumerian name for the underworld. There already was a sovereign of the underworld there, Ereshkigal. She was the queen of the underworld. Later, Ereshkigal gained a husband in Nergal, not to be confused with Nergal from Warhammer 40k. That's a different entity entirely. But Nergal was hailed as king of the underworld in Mesopotamia. He also was a deity of warfare and plagues. Good ways to send you to the underworld. Meanwhile, Dumuzi had sort of a timeshare in Kur. He only had to spend 6 months out of the year there because his sister Geshtinana selflessly volunteered to take the other half of the year in his place. Despite being a shepherd, Dumuzi's cycle of death and rebirth tied into the agricultural cycle and embodied the grain as well. Meanwhile, his sister Geshtinana tied in with the grape harvest. Now, Dumuzi was invoked as a judge of the netherworld who could take care of troublesome ghosts and spirits and help you undo curses and things like that. But he was not the top boss, if you will, the final boss of Kur. That belonged to either Ereshkigal or Nergal. These details point to differences in how the two civilizations looked at death and the afterlife. The Egyptians feared dying, as all humans do, and sometimes they did question their own religious practices in some of the songs that we have recorded from the Middle Kingdom in particular. But they still generally saw death as a transformation that was necessary in order to reach eternal life. They invested so much time and effort, and materials into, their funerary goods because they were optimistic about needing them in the first place. They felt that, there is going to be something out there, and I better have, some tools with me because, yes, there was, danger to overcome, but beyond those, dangerous and ambivalent guardians of the underworld lay the fields of peace. On the other hand, the Mesopotamians definitely feared death, and they saw it as a finality, not necessarily a transformation. And as opposed to the fields of peace, in the Mesopotamian view of Kur, it was a city of the dead, if you will, but the social structure there pretty much reflected the social structure in the world of the living, and they felt that unless you had family or concerned others to make offerings for you at the necessary times, then your existence in Kur was going to be dusty and dreary, and you wouldn't have any food or offerings, and their cloaks were of feathers, and and their food was of dust. It seems kind of disappointing and nihilistic, but is it any more so than the view that some people have of death today? Question to ponder. Is it more pessimistic to feel that, the underworld, the afterlife, is a dusty place full of, time-sharing deities, or to feel that there's absolutely nothing to be had at all? At least you've got to shot at something interesting, in the Mesopotamian version. So the next time you hear a laundry list invocation that lumps Osiris and Dumuzi and Adonis and all these other deities together, just smile and roll with it, while knowing that all of those deities are separate and distinct entities. As to who wins, well, I keep picturing Osiris handing a list to Dumuzi, every spring and saying, hey, while you're up there, can you get a few things? Nergal keeps raiding the fridge. And it's time, once again, for another happy dance for all of our super stickers. Thank you so much for being so awesome, because you support this channel and what we do. You guys rock. And remember, this channel has no AI content, no corporate sponsors. We're just cool. So remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check the video description for links to my books and to my sister channel, Golden Age Video, which has animation and more fun stuff on it. And we'll be back next month with another deep dive on Egyptian deities. So, for the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon wishing you Senecti. Enjoyed this video? Then be sure to hit like and subscribe to the Kemetic Independent channel. You can also buy my books on Lulu.com, and special thanks to all my Patreon supporters. Join us for updates, outtakes, and exclusive videos only on Patreon. Check the description for links.
Cannot believe what I'm seeing!